A frayed picture of my younger self smiled back at me, one with jet black hair, nave eyes, and a hope that gleamed like the summer sun. 30 years ago, that was the image of Marcus Weller, the new janitor at Street Augustine High School. Today, my reflection mirrored a middle-aged man, graying at the temples, back slightly hunched from years of hard labor, and eyes that had seen too much of spilled soda and discarded chewing gum. The school itself had seen better days, much like me. It was a vast building that stood imposing, with old bricks and Gothic spires reaching to the sky. It harbored tales, nostalgia, and over time, secrets. I'd been there long enough to hear whispers of clandestine meetings, hushed affairs, and midnight pranks. But the school was my sanctuary. It provided a steady income, and more importantly, it housed memories of when my son was a student there. One evening, while cleaning the storage room adjacent to the old gymnasium, I stumbled upon a wooden trapdoor concealed under a threadbare rug. Piqued by curiosity, I decided to explore. The trapdoor led to a flight of stone steps descending into the darkness. Retrieving my flashlight, I ventured down into the unknown. The atmosphere felt colder, almost suffocating. The space I entered resembled a forgotten basement, filled with dusty furniture, old school records, and cobweb corners. On one wall, a rack caught my attention. It was adorned with various personal items, watches, earrings, pendants, and more. They were oddly familiar. The pendant, for instance, was strikingly similar to one worn by Mrs. Mitchell, the history teacher. The silver watch. I could swear it belonged to Coach Thompson. A chill ran down my spine when my flashlight illuminated a makeshift workstation, a chair, a table, and heaps of photographs. But these weren't ordinary photographs. There were candid shots of the staff. Mrs. Mitchell marking papers in her home, Coach Thompson at a cafe, Miss Collins, the librarian, reading a bedtime story to her daughter. I felt a rising dread as I realized that these were surveillance photos. Every photograph was marked with dates, times, and locations. My breath caught as I picked up a picture dated just a week ago. It showed me buying groceries. Panicking, I scanned the room for answers. On the table lay a journal, its pages filled with meticulous notes. Entries detailed the habits, strengths, and vulnerabilities of every staff member. There was a chilling professional detachment in the observations, devoid of emotion. And as I flipped through the journal, a pattern began to emerge. After a few months of surveillance, each person's belongings would mysteriously vanish, only to appear in this very basement. Suddenly, a sharp clang echoed, and the room went pitch black. My flashlight had died. The eerie silence was punctuated by a faint dripping sound, reminiscent of a leaking faucet. As my eyes slowly adjusted, a dim light from the stairway illuminated a figure at the entrance. I couldn't discern any features, but the silhouette was unmistakably human. My heart raced. Instinctively, I ducked behind a stack of boxes, but the place was too quiet, and my own breath sounded deafening. "Why do you hide, Marcus?" A voice rasped, echoing eerily in the confined space. "How do you know my name?" I whispered, trying to steady my trembling hands. "Who do you think kept these records? These keepsakes?" The voice was closer now. I felt cold air brush against my face. For years, I'd watched, learned, and taken what I desired. My mind raced, searching for an escape. If I could make it to the trapdoor, I'd have a chance. Mustering every ounce of courage, I lunged toward the stairs. But the stranger was quicker. He grabbed my ankle, pulling me to the cold ground. Desperation filled me. I kicked, connecting with the intruder, and heard him grunt in pain. Using the brief moment of respite, I scrambled up the stairs and out the trapdoor. Without looking back, I bolted out of the storage room and into the main hallway. The exit was just ahead, but as I approached the door, I realized it was chained from the outside. Panic set in. I was trapped. The footsteps grew louder, echoing the beat of my frantic heart. Cornered, I searched for anything to defend myself. The sound stopped just outside the storage room. "I just want to add to my collection," the voice cooed menacingly. Then a brilliant idea struck me. I remembered the old fire alarm next to the principal's office, a relic that still functioned. Racing towards it, I pulled the lever. A deafening siren blared, piercing the night. The footsteps hesitated, then grew fainter. I heard the distant sound of a door crashing open. Then the silence of the night returned. Police swarmed the school soon after, but the stranger was never found. They did, however, uncover a shocking revelation. The journal and photographs led them to a disgraced former teacher, someone who'd been fired years ago due to inappropriate conduct. It became clear that the man harbored an obsession, meticulously tracking staff members, learning our routines, and collecting souvenirs, all while hiding in plain sight. The ordeal left the entire staff shaken. But for me, the school's sanctity had been shattered. I handed in my resignation soon after. A year has passed, and though I found another job, I constantly look over my shoulder, haunted by the fact that he's still out there, watching. The photographs may be in police custody, but the memories of that basement and of that voice are forever etched in my mind. No matter where I go, the paranoia persists. What if he's still following, still watching, waiting for another perfect keepsake? In an age dominated by technology, there's a uniquely unsettling nature to a handwritten note. The feel of coarse paper, the distinct ink smears, and the tangible weight of someone's emotions inked on it, particularly when that note bears an ominous message. In the town of Redwood, I was once a luminary, a promising sprinter. My name was synonymous with speed. Locals believed I was destined for the Olympics, but a fateful stumble during a race led to a serious leg injury. My dreams shattered, much like the bones of my leg. After months in the hospital, I decided that if I couldn't run, I would inspire others to, so I began coaching at Redwood High School. Over the years, many students came under my wing, but Alex was unique. He wasn't just gifted, he was transcendent, the kind of talent that came once in a generation. In his first month, he shattered every existing school record. Scouts would visit our practices, always with an eye on him. His future was dazzlingly bright. But the day I received that first note, the brightness was suddenly obscured. Stay away from Alex or face the consequences. The note read, the words hastily scribbled in black ink. Initially, I dismissed it as some misguided prank by a rival school's supporter. But soon, another note appeared. This one slipped under my office door. This is your last chance. Keep away from Alex. The message was clear, and the underlying threat was palpable. A veil of paranoia began to surround me. I found myself watching over my shoulder, double-checking locks, and second-guessing every unfamiliar face at the gym. Why Alex? Who felt so threatened by him? Another evening, after an intensive training session, I found the third note. It was pinned under my car's wiper blade. Did you think we were joking? Attached was a newspaper clipping from my accident years ago. My heart raced. This was getting personal. The school gym, with its faded wooden floors and the scent of old leather, had always been a sanctuary for me. Now, every echoing footstep or creaking door sent a jolt of anxiety through my veins. I even thought of quitting, but looking at Alex, his passion, his potential, I couldn't let fear dictate my decisions. However, one chilly evening, my fears materialized. As I was finishing up, I heard the unmistakable sound of a bouncing basketball. Turning around, a shadowy figure stood at the opposite end of the court. Steeling myself, I called out, "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure paused and then started walking towards me, the echoing sound of his footsteps resonating in the vast emptiness of the gym. "It's not Alex I have an issue with," he said, his voice familiar yet distant. "It's you?" As he stepped into the dim light, recognition dawned. His face, older and lined with bitterness, but unmistakably someone I once knew. "Derek," I whispered, recalling a former student, a talented boy but one who lacked discipline and often clashed with my strict coaching methods. Derek smirked. "Oh, so you remember? You crushed my dreams, told me I'd never make it. And now, you're guiding another star. I can't allow it." My heart raced. "Derek, I was tough on you because I believed in you. I'm sorry you felt that way. But it's the past. You need to move on." His eyes, filled with rage, told me that moving on was not an option. "You destroyed my future. Now I'll ensure you destroy no more." He lunged at me, a flash of metal in his hand. I braced myself. But before he could reach me, a basketball slammed into Derek, throwing him off balance. I turned to see Alex, his face pale but determined. Together, we managed to restrain Derek until the police arrived. As they escorted him away, his eyes, filled with tears and rage, met mine. The depth of this pain and resentment was palpable. In the aftermath, Alex and I became even closer. The trauma of that evening bound us in a way nothing else could. Alex went on to receive a scholarship to a top university, and I continued coaching, albeit with a more attentive eye on the emotional well-being of my students. Derek's descent into obsession served as a chilling reminder that the echoes of the past can sometimes resonate with an intensity that's both unexpected and terrifying. A year ago, I was desperately hunting for a job to pay off my student loans, which is how I found myself as a security guard at the Jameson High School. I was fresh out of college with a degree in criminology, hoping for a bright future in law enforcement. But until that happened, I needed money. The security job, specifically the night shift, was all that was available. At first, it seemed like a breeze. My duties were to ensure the school remained secure, monitoring the CCTV cameras stationed all over the school, and doing the occasional patrol. The hours were long and often tedious, but I soon settled into a rhythm. One evening, as I was watching the screens, I noticed an unfamiliar face. A man, late 40s maybe, wearing a tattered coat and a fedora that obscured most of his face. He seemed to be watching one of the teachers, Mrs. Grayson, as she left her classroom. My initial thought was that he might be a concerned parent, but his demeanor was off. The way he lurked in the shadows, silently following her as she walked to her car, sent chills down my spine. Thinking it was just a one-time occurrence, I noted down the incident and continued with my duties. But every evening after that, I saw him again and again on the footage. It wasn't just Mrs. Grayson he was following. He seemed to be stalking different teachers each night. The real mystery began when I tried to show my findings to my supervisor. Every morning when I returned to check the footage from the previous night, it was erased. It was as if someone or something didn't want any evidence of this man's presence. I decided to investigate further. Digging into the school's past, I discovered a disturbing fact. 10 years ago, a teacher disappeared without a trace. Though her disappearance was reported to the police, they found no leads. All they had was her last known location, Jameson High School. An old rumor, which I thought was mere school myth, resurfaced in my memory. She was rumored to have had an affair with a mysterious man, and after her disappearance, he too was never seen again. One night, as I was engrossed in my thoughts, trying to piece the puzzle together, I heard a light tap on the window of the security room. It was well past midnight, and the last person had left the school hours ago. I peered through the window but saw nothing. I decided to step out and do a patrol. As I walked down the dimly lit hallways, I felt a sense of unease, as if I was being watched. Every time I turned a corner, I thought I saw the tail end of that tattered coat disappearing. I decided to set a trap. The next day, I discreetly installed an extra camera, one that fed directly to my personal laptop and not the main security system. That night, like clockwork, I saw him again, but this time, as he stalked another teacher. He looked directly into my hidden camera, a smirk formed on his face, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. Those cold, dead eyes made my heart race. Suddenly, the lights in the security room flickered and went out. The room was engulfed in darkness. The only light came from my laptop screen, where I could still see him, moving closer to the security room. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself to think logically. My training kicked in. I reached for the flashlight in my pocket and quietly locked the door to the room. Minutes felt like hours. As I listened intently for any sound, I then heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming towards the security room. The doorknob jiggled, then silence. Suddenly, a note slid under the door. It read, "You're new here, so I'll give you a piece of advice. Stop looking into things that don't concern you." Terrified, I waited for dawn, clutching the note in my hand. The next morning, I went to the principal with my findings and the note. The school decided to bring the police in, hoping that with the new evidence, they might catch the stalker. They set up a sting operation, with officers hiding throughout the school during my shift. But that night, the man didn't appear. A week later, the operation was called off. The man had vanished. The police theorized that he might have been tipped off or simply decided to lay low. However, one officer, Detective Martinez, approached me. "There's something you should know," he began. "The teacher who disappeared 10 years ago, she had a son, who was rumored to have been deeply affected by her sudden disappearance." Detective Martinez then showed me an old school picture. It was him, the man in the tattered coat. He wasn't just any stalker. He was the son of the teacher who had vanished, searching for answers or perhaps revenge. As weeks turned into months, the school returned to normal. I never saw the man again, but every night during my shift, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. One evening, as I was locking up the security room, I found another note on my desk. It was written in the same handwriting as before. "I'm always watching.